views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. Today, we're going to update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we're going to learn about a not-for-profit organization that's actually providing advocacy on educational issues affecting public school students in New York City. And then, October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We'll learn about laws protecting abuse victims. Then also, we'll discuss a recent survey on the impact of COVID-19 on Bronx youth. That'll be a little bit later on in our show. And then later, we'll talk about how Bronx Community College Athletics Department has also been impacted by COVID-19. And then finally, we'll discuss how one company is utilizing augmented reality in education. So stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. And hello, everyone. I'm Daren Jaime, and today is Wednesday, October 21st. And yes, you are watching Open, a live and interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV sets. We also want to welcome all of our viewers on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on the MNN channel. You can also stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. Well, a lot has certainly been going on throughout the course of the past week in the Bronx and New York City. Don't have time to tell you all, but we can take you through a couple of things with our Bronx updates. We start off with news in the MTA. Violent crime on subways is on the rise. Many people fear that it's due to a lack of witnesses. Our BronxNet reporter, Darissa White, speaks to strap hangers and brings us this story.
An empty train car at 8:30 at night. Now that's a rarity in New York City, but this is all due to commuters' fear of catching COVID-19, but also the fear of finding themselves in a compromising situation with no witnesses.
The MTA reports ridership is only at 25%. Even with the city slowly springing back to life, strap hangers are still straying away. With subways less crowded, the MTA saw an uptick in violent crimes, including robberies, rapes, and felony assaults. This year, NYPD stats showed transit received 103 complaints, compared to last year at 211. Although the number doesn't surpass the previous year, it's still too high for the current ridership percentage.
We've also seen, as there's been a decline in ridership, there are fewer eyes in the system.
Lisa Danglian is executive director of Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, a watchdog group for transit workers and riders. She says her organization noticed the spike in crime, but believes MTA staffing could go a long way in making riders feel safe.
As the percentage of ridership decreases, percentage of the negative element that may be in the system grows. I'd like to see people in bright orange vests out on the platform so that if something does happen, they have a body to go to. They can feel as though there's a protection there.
Although commuters would like to see more staff, it won't happen anytime soon. The MTA is currently facing a financial crisis, a $12 billion deficit, and needs ridership to go up. But for many, the lack of NYPD's presence makes the subway system feel like the least safest place to be.
If you saw an empty train car just coming into the station, would you get on it?
No.
Stephanie, a frequent MTA rider, says the lack of fellow passengers feels unsettling.
it's just one of those things. There's no cameras on the train, so no one's gonna say if someone, a stranger did come in, like, you never know who people are, you know?
We reached out to the NYPD Chief of Transit Office to address the lack of police presence in the subway system currently, but we have not heard back. Reporting for BronxNet, Darissa White.
And thank you, Darissa. In other news, Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark sponsored an anti-violence fair with Lincoln Hospital's Guns Down, Life Up program, which is a program working to stem the rise in shootings citywide. Our BronxNet reporter Arlene Makoko has that story.
He's back at home after serving 26 years behind bars for a fatal shooting when he was 17 years old with this message for young people.
You got to think and you got to have some type of compassion for others.
At Belmont Park, Andre Patterson joined District Attorney Darcel Clark and other anti-violence groups in response to what has been an alarming rise in homicides citywide this year, with the latest figures by the NYPD showing 346 deaths as of October 4th compared to 254 during the same time period last year.
We have got to stop these shootings in our community. It's not only devastating us, it's killing us. And we need to be outraged by it.
She launched Save Our Sons and Daughters walks with Councilmember Vanessa Gibson in response to several high-profile cases. While the numbers are high, State Senator Louis Sepulveda says he sees change coming.
The reality is that things are calming down, and you're going to see crime rates, which have been historically low up until coronavirus, you're going to see that trajectory continue.
Guns Down, Life Up is the public hospital's response to gun violence.
James Dobbins is director of the program at Lincoln Hospital and is working to redirect the goals of young people from violence by cultivating their talents and providing jobs.
We hear about the solutions. So we have court-mandated kids, alternative to incarceration.
Also there, Children of Promise NYC, a nonprofit that works with children whose parent or parents are incarcerated.
We are right now a learning lab from 8 a.m. until 3 every day for the children who aren't able to go to school regularly, right? We do offer a free summer camp, free after school. We do a lot of things around enrichment and community outreach.
All programs that Patterson believes can work to set a young life in the right direction, all for the good of the neighborhood.
My mind is matured enough to understand the hurt that you cause when you do certain things to not just your family, to a person in particular, but a community as a whole.
So for those who are victims, there are resources here, but the message truly is that gun violence does not work. Here at Belmont Park, Arlene Makoko for BronxNet.
And thank you, Arlene. And that's all the time we have for our Bronx updates. We want you to stay with us. We've got a full show. Open will continue right after this.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Remember, we're not just voting for president, we're also voting for local representation here in the Bronx. Vote411.org/ballot is a great resource to find out what other races are happening and who is running to represent your community. Simply enter your address, then click Show My Races. You will see a sample ballot displaying the presidential race and other local races taking place in your district. Early voting starts between October 24th to November 1st, and absentee ballots are due no later than November 3rd.
And thank you for staying with us. Advocates for Children is a not-for-profit organization that's providing advocacy for students and their families on a whole array of educational issues affecting public school students in New York City. They serve on behalf of students who are at greatest risk for school-based discrimination and/or academic failure due to poverty, disability, ethnicity, immigrant status, or other things. The question is, how has the organization actually been affected due to COVID-19, and what initiatives are actually being put in place to help those in need? Here to share a little bit more with us is the Director of Advocates for Children Parent Center, Liliana Díaz-Pedrosa, and we welcome Liliana to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. And so when we talk about organizations that are actually affected by COVID, we know every organization has been affected in its own kind of way. But when you talk about really providing services to children and youth, they are considered amongst the most vulnerable population, especially in a time such as this. So give me a little bit about your organization, how you guys have had to navigate through this COVID-19 situation.
Well, like every organization, it's been challenging for families to deal with the sudden changes in the way that their children received education. For us, the switch has been to go remote and to try to provide information in as many different ways as possible to families so that they can navigate the school system during this time and advocate for the educational rights of their own children. What we have been doing is offering a lot of virtual uh, events. So, for example, we've been doing weekly Facebook Live presentations in Spanish and English to try to update families about what their rights are right now and how things may be changing from week to week. We have offered a lot of guides, pamphlets, information that are now housed in our website, which is advocatesforchildren.org. We have presented webinars live on our YouTube page on issues that are as wide-ranging as grading policies, early childhood education, special education basics, remote learning during this time, and additional pieces of information that come up. We have been serving families remotely, even though our doors are currently closed. We are fully open to providing information through our helpline, through our website, through our information line. We've been really trying to go as far as we need to go to meet the families that are in need.
And so give me a little bit about, when you're doing children's advocacy, the work that goes on, because as you take care of the most vulnerable population, I know that, advocating for children, and I talked about it in the intro, a wide variety of different ways that you guys provide services for children.
So advocacy might mean having a conversation with a parent and providing information about the next steps might be, for example, and getting an evaluation for special education services right now, or how to get a device, or how to connect a device to Department of Education. So it could be something that's very complex in terms of information, or something really simple, just like, let's walk you through how you find the settings in your device, and let's figure out a way for you to connect to the Zoom platform that the Department of Education is using. So it could be anything from hands-on virtually to walking through a complex process step by step, so that the family then knows what's next, what options they have, and what they can choose from to navigate to the next piece that they need to. It could be a number of different things. I wish I could be more tangible in this.
Right. But are you seeing a trend of something that the families are asking for more of these days, or what are the common demographics that you're dealing with now in the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, it's funny because it's actually changed from almost from week to week. So when we went full virtual during the first closing, we were talking about how to get devices, how to connect, what does it look like right now, with the idea that perhaps after the summer this would end. With the back to school, there were additional issues such as busing for students who were attending in a hybrid way, to how do I get the new devices, how do I connect to Zoom. Parents are very concerned about the time that students are receiving services. So they may be concerned, for example, if they're remote, that they're not getting as many hours of services as they would if they were hybrid. And funny enough, the same concern is for hybrid students when they go back home and they receive their services remotely. There's a lot of concerns about students who receive special education services, whether they are receiving appropriate services while they are at home, or even while they're in school. There's just a host of difficult moments with parents who are at home, are in need of supporting their child through a platform class, a Zoom class that they may not be equipped to handle themselves, and they have other things to do. There's also parents who work, who are in need of a place for their children to be while they are working and not in school. There's just a number of different concerns that come, and there's not one that one can say this is a one size fits all, but there is a commonality to it, and that is that we're in a time of crisis. And trying to be a parent and navigate the school system that itself is navigating through this difficult time is very complicated. And that is why one of the things that we do is to try to offer as much information as we can as soon as we receive it, with the understanding that it might be incomplete information. It might change at the next day even, but it is the information that we have so that parents can then figure out a little bit better what they need to do next.
Yeah. And when we talk about a parent, there may be a parent out there right now that's watching and saying, listen, I feel a little bit, not a little, a lot, way overwhelmed with what's going on. If a parent is watching right now and saying, listen, I'm overwhelmed, I need some assistance, it just seems like too much. What can they do? What resources are available?
So if you have questions, if you're a New York City parent who lives in one of the 5 boroughs and you have questions about education, it is an overwhelming time, reach out to us, ask questions. We have a free helpline that functions 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4. I can give you the phone number, but I think you'll probably put it on, which is 866-427-6033, and ask questions. Ask any question that you have. Our services are free and you will speak with an expert in education rights in New York City. You can also go to our website, advocatesforchildren.org, and look for guidance, information, our recorded webinars to educate yourself a little bit more about what is happening and what you can do. But if that is too much, because we have so much to do, then you can also send us an email and let us know what your question is, and we can get in touch with you and answer that question, just so you can then start processing this part of the crisis with some assistance. You are not alone. I mean, we certainly can support you in this piece.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the policies, because prior to COVID-19, I know that you're very engaged in policies and initiatives, particularly dealing with youth students. Talk to us about some of the stuff that you were working on before this COVID pandemic hit.
Well, we've always been working on just improving the educational system for students with disabilities. We work on a broad variety of issues with the Department of Education, and we advocate for broader solutions around anything that has to do with accessing services, language access rights, rights for children who are coming in from lockup facilities or who are involved in the juvenile justice system. We advocate around issues of access to education and opportunity. It's really just such a broad variety of pieces. I'm trying to think of one area to highlight, but the piece that I think is the most important that we do is we collect the information that we have. We identify trends that parents are concerned about in the school system, and then we take that back to the Department of Education and say, hey, here's a problem. Is there something that you can do about this? So not just on an individual basis, but also on a systemic basis, so that the system can improve for the benefit of all the students that are participating in it.
Yeah. Well, certainly we want to thank you, Liliana, for coming and sharing and giving us a little bit more information. For people who want more help, give me the number for the helpline.
Sure thing. The number for the helpline is 866-427-6033. It is a free phone number, and it can be reached anytime between the hours of 10 and 4 from Monday through Thursday.
All right, Liliana, well, we want to leave it there. And thank you so much for joining us here on Open.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, guess what? If you want more information, we encourage you to stay connected to them on their social media platform. How do you do that? Well, all you have to do is go on Instagram and Twitter at AFC New York. Once again, the number, I should say the letters are AFC New York. All right. We do have more show. We want you to stay with us. Open will continue. We're coming right back right after this.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people. Avoid crowds. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
And welcome back here to Open. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, an estimated 1.3 million women and 835,000 men are abused by their partners every year. Cases of domestic violence became more prevalent during the coronavirus pandemic. and many individuals are unaware of what their next steps are and what they actually need to do to ensure protection. Joining us now in this segment to tell us a little bit more is the owner of the Marnell Law Group, Russell Marnell, and he'll share a little bit with us about domestic violence and domestic violence awareness. And Russell, good to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Daren. Thank you.
Thank you. And listen, we talk about October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Obviously, domestic violence is something that goes on every month, every day across America. But talk to us about your experience with the COVID-19 pandemic. What are we seeing by way of numbers? Are we seeing more cases being reported? Because from some domestic violence advocates, they feel as though a whole lot is also still silent.
I think both. I think there are more cases being reported, but at the same time, there are more cases also that are not being reported because of the circumstances that exist with COVID. And what I mean by that is that besides the fact that the victim of domestic violence is still residing with their partner or spouse during COVID, there are more reasons because of COVID that make it more difficult for a victim to leave the residence that they might be with the abuser. And I say that because COVID certainly has significantly and negatively impacted financially on many couples and their relationships, making it more difficult for them to access the financial resources to leave. And also just COVID itself, concerns about catching the virus might have in some ways influenced victims to remain in the house where if they understand that it's a COVID-free environment, they might be more reluctant to move to another location.
Talk to me about domestic violence. When we talk about it as a whole, many people often go to the physical form of domestic violence, and they've equated domestic violence as being something that's just physical. But from a legal perspective, I know that, and I know that, domestic violence extends into several other areas. But for someone who may not be so familiar with domestic violence, what would entail domestic violence from a legal perspective?
Well, certainly physical violence, as you indicated, often is one form of, and a common form of domestic violence, but it could also be emotional and psychological abuse. It could be violence towards property that has a significant impact on the victim. But oftentimes the psychological abuse can be just as damaging, if not more so, than the physical abuse. And psychological abuse is constantly cursing at their spouse or paramour, threatening to do certain things to their paramour, whether it be physical in terms of violence or emotional or even monetary. All those types of threats can have significant emotional and psychological ramifications. But from a legal point of view, threats and cursing and items along or conduct consistent with that would be for the cursing part, no legitimate purpose, things like that would be a basis of or type of domestic violence that doesn't involve some type of physical confrontation.
Mm-hmm. And what advice do you give to people right now who may be actually struggling dealing with this issue from a perspective of when does it become a legal matter that I should seek an attorney?
Well, I guess it depends on the threshold of tolerance that the victim has, as well as the legalities of it certainly come into play too. They wouldn't know necessarily the legalities of it. So that's why I said the threshold of tolerance. Once it becomes the victim contacts, let's say the Coalition on Domestic Violence and the police, that's probably the time that certainly to reach out and obtain a lawyer who's involved in the field of the matrimonial and family law, so they can give guidance as to what the appropriate legal remedies would be in terms of orders of protection in the context of family court. If it escalates to a criminal matter in addition to that, then there could be orders of protection in the criminal matter also. Now, you don't necessarily need an attorney to represent the victim in a criminal matter because the district attorney or assistant district attorney who works for the state would essentially be akin to the attorney for the victim, although technically they're not the attorney, but they represent the people of the state, and the victim is the complainant. So they don't need the complainant or the victim doesn't need a separate attorney. Obviously, the perpetrator of the crime would obviously need a criminal attorney of some type. In the context of family court, the victim probably should have an attorney. And the end game of a family court would be a order of protection, which would require, at minimum, usually the respondent, the person who perpetuated the domestic violence, to refrain from assault, menacing, harassment, or any of the underlying, whatever the underlying allegations are on the petition that would give rise to the final order of protection. When there's abuse, significant abuse, especially physical abuse, there's often a stay away provision in the order of protection, which requires the perpetrator to stay away from the victim, both where the victim works, where the victim lives, or in any public place where the perpetrator may encounter the victim. So,
and when you talk about that stay away order, most of the time people think about a man with a woman. Usually the man is the one that receives the stay away order. From talking to people on the legal front, we're finding out more and more now that women are actually receiving more and more stay away orders as well. True?
Yes, there are certainly a greater percentage of men who are now willing to petition a family court to get an order of protection than perhaps in the past, due to embarrassment or perceived humiliation, and that a woman assaulted them or beat them up or hit them or possibly even used a weapon against them. Now they're standing up for their rights also to live without having to be in constant fear of being assaulted or threatened by their female companion. So yes, more and more men are now seeking orders of protection also.
Russ, we're gonna have to leave it there, but for people who want more information, what can they do in a time such as this?
Contact the local coalition of domestic violence in the vicinity of where they live. Certainly, if it's an emergency, contact the police, dial 911 to get intervention. And if it's not an emergency, they should contact a competent matrimonial or family law attorney to assist them through the process.
Yeah. Russell Marnell, thank you so much for being with us and sharing with us. I think a lot of information has been given that people can take a look and see, as we're talking about National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, that the services as well as the challenges of this present time. Thanks a lot, Russell.
Thank you, Darren. Have a wonderful day.
All righty, Russell Marnell, our guest here on Open. We want you to stay with us. Guess what? We've got more show coming up. Don't go anywhere. Open will return right after this.
Listen up, Bronxites. Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Are you safely hitting the polls for in-person voting? Or are you voting absentee by mailing in your ballot? New York offers absentee ballots by mail to voters who will be unable to vote in person for any reason. Absentee voting can be confusing, but it's safe and has become more common during coronavirus due to fears of crowding when voting at poll sites. In the primary elections, more than 500,000 ballots were rejected and discarded due to human error. So before you start filling in your ballot, make sure to keep the following in mind. Fill in your bubble selections with a blue or black ink pen only. Never mark any X's or check marks as opposed to filling these bubbles in. Don't forget to sign and date the back of the ballot envelope. And finally, mail your absentee ballot before the deadline, November 3rd. You can also drop it off in person at an early voting poll site between October 24th and November 1st, at a poll site on Election Day, November 3rd by 9 p.m., or at the Bronx County Board of Elections office no later than November 3rd by 9 p.m. Stay informed, stay safe, and most importantly, make sure you mail your absentee ballot or wear a mask, remain 6 feet apart, and safely head out to the polls to have your vote count and your voice heard.
And welcome back. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted life for many facets of society. However, people of different ages are experiencing different effects as well as different kinds of ways. The Thinkubator has conducted a study on the impact COVID-19 has actually had on youth in the Bronx. The pandemic has impacted youths in different arenas, such as education, employment, as well as mental health. Here to share a little bit more about the survey and the results is the director of the think tank at the Thinkubator, Dr. Lessie Branch, and also the apprentice at the Thinkubator, James Walrond. And Dr. Lessie and James, good to have you.
Nice to be with you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Well, I mean, a lot of times when we talk about Dr. Lessie, COVID-19, it always goes to the most vulnerable population. It talks about definitely people, communities of color. And I think many times that what we have not talked about was that of youth. But I know that you guys have been front and center taking a look at how youth have been impacted. So give us a little bit about the impetus behind why you conducted this survey.
My perspective as a policy scholar who focuses on issues of racial disparity, I think that it is so important to include the voices from their lived perspective of communities that are marginalized and typically don't have a platform from which to speak about things that are impacting them. And so there's usually an ascendant narrative that is put out about those communities. And so the think tank seeks to work with Bronx youth and other Bronx constituencies to create narratives to put out policy briefs about issues that are affecting them from their lived experience. And so in conjunction with the Thinkubator, most of their programming focuses on and around youth. And so the apprentice at the Thinkubator, James, has created the survey, administered it, and has analyzed the results. And so, I definitely would like for him to speak about the results of the study that he designed.
Yeah. And James, I'll bring you in right now that you might be able to share a little bit about the survey. Talk to me about the survey and what exactly were you trying to capture?
So I was really trying to capture how COVID-19 has affected every aspect of students and people around my age's lifestyle at the moment. So we've all know that COVID-19 has an unprecedented impact on the Bronx youth and families. And currently, unemployment rates are under 25%, and the survey results reveal that 94% of the youth would like to work while attending school at the moment, because a lot of our youth are having trouble getting everyday necessities like toilet paper and diapers and food and water. So right now, the whole reason for the COVID-19 survey was just like, it was to really point out those facts and to show people like how the youth really need people to, help support them at this time.
And talking about when you got the results back, when you talk about 94% of youth would like to work and also, do what they do. Talk to me, was any of these results surprising to you?
No, none of these results were surprising to me because, I'm a youth myself, and I am also going through the same things that a lot of these students are going through when it comes to like education and like having to get, supplies and, the different things that are affecting us at this, time. A lot of our students right now, like 35% of our students at the moment are currently doing hybrid format of school, which is, what I'm also doing. And a lot of people have had a lot of trouble adjusting to this new online learning and, having, difficulties connecting or having, difficulties finding ways to really make time and fit it in the schedule of this, new way of learning.
Great work. I want to talk to Dr. Lessie about this because as we see these statistics come out, obviously a lot of great concern. Talk to me about, people such as James, young people who definitely are making their voices heard. With a survey like this, where do you go from here?
So, that's a great, segue. And so the implication for youth needing and or wanting to work is quite interesting and should be spotlighted for several reasons. And so the need or the want to work while attending school arises, from an already precarious and a COVID-19 accelerated unemployment experience in the Bronx, right? And so surveyed youth in James's survey, they want to help support their families while they're attending school. And slightly more than a third of the surveyed respondents, as James pointed out, indicated that somebody in their household lost their job, which correlates with the increase of unemployment rate in the Bronx. And so slightly more than a quarter of the respondents indicated that someone in their family was either sick or died from COVID. And so the ascendant narrative in this country is failing those who act responsibly in the persons of our young people, right? And so dominant narratives also serve as policy foundations and prescriptions. And so the policies directed at marginalized groups emphasize austerity, and they try to change behavior while ignoring the structural barriers that are faced by these folks. And so the paradox here is that the respondents in our survey are acting personally responsible, right? And so what more is it that you want these young people to do, right? Their education is at the fore. It is important to them, but they are also acting in responsible ways to help their family in economic crises. And so youth such as James and those who've responded to the survey are getting to tell their story in their own voice and from their lived perspective, right? And so what can people do? What should people do? Well, as James eloquently pointed out, it is important to provide resources to organizations such as the Thinkubator and other organizations that are helping youth in these very trying and dire times. I don't know of any other socioeconomic group where youth have to focus on trying to go to school and help their family out economically. And that, those qualities are very admirable, and they speak to a maturity, and certainly they speak to responsibility. And I applaud James and his colleagues who, have stepped up to try to, manage during these very trying times.
Yeah, well, definitely the light has been shined, and of course we're going to continue to keep this conversation going. Got to bring you back so that we can talk a little bit more about this and how do we navigate this and how do we also help, possibly be an advocate and an ally to making sure that youth get the necessary resources that they need. James, I want to thank you for your time sharing and great work on the survey. And then also Dr. Lessie, thank you for being with us as well.
It was certainly our pleasure, Daren. Thank you.
Certainly. Well, listen, we want you to stay connected, and we want to take a quick break. We do have more shows, so don't go anywhere. Open will return right after this. Athletics is committed to assisting its student athletes in reaching their potential academically as well as athletically. Athletics usually strives for excellence by offering all student athlete programs an opportunity to develop meaningful standards of performance, leadership, and also sportsmanship within the college educational and social environments. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected athletic efforts and has presented many obstacles for family and student athletes moving forward. Here now to share a little bit more about what is actually going on in regards to student athletes and the struggles that athletic departments are having, we're pleased to be welcome, or I should say pleased to welcome the Director of Athletics at Bronx Community College, Ryan McCarthy. And Ryan, good to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Daren.
Thank you. Well, I know that most of the time we focus a lot of our attention on professional sports. We spend a lot of time talking about Division I sports. But when it comes to Division III athletics, you guys have also been adversely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Talk to us a little bit about how you've been able to navigate with COVID-19.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, we lose that face-to-face interaction that we would get on a daily basis and that our student athletes would get daily, just dropping by, seeing us, dropping by the office. So then on a recruiting front, that created a whole new set of circumstances starting in the spring, certainly over the summer, some hot recruiting, typically some hot times for student athlete recruitment. So that created some challenges, forced our coaches to really emphasize their contacts and their ability to recruit electronically.
Yeah. And when we talk about recruiting, talk to me about students, right? How hard is it to actually tell a student, listen, we want you to come to our school. We want you to be a part of our athletic program. However, you know that there's a possibility that they may not necessarily even have a season.
Right. And we're doing everything in our power to make that season realistic and make reality. So the most difficult part about that is losing the face-to-face recruiting interaction, being able to host the student on campus. We in the Bronx have a 50-acre campus that we're unable to bring students to. We have the on-campus facilities, as do a lot of schools, that we don't have the luxury of showing the students. So that made that a real challenge, forced that kind of show and tell of the recruitment to take place virtually. So thankfully our coaches were able to kind of audible and do that electronically, kind of spur of the moment.
And given the fact that some sports are not really sports are in general not taking place across campuses, particularly at the Division III level, what's it been like for athletes today, being able to not with the opportunity to play?
Right, and to that I have to say thank God for Zoom. So that's allowed us to kind of simulate that face-to-face interaction, whether it's just team meetings or workouts, whether it's academic support. We've held student athlete town halls to kind of keep students abreast of the changes locally on campus, the support systems we have for them, and some of the changes nationally and regionally. So they're up to date on what we're looking at as administrators, and they can kind of see that light at the end of the tunnel coming sooner or later.
Yeah. Well, let me ask a question about athletics and scholarships. Talk to me a little bit about athletics and scholarships. Have some of your athletes already received academic athletic scholarships to continue their education and athletic endeavors?
They have. That's something we're really proud of, both athletic and academic scholarships. So our All-American point guard from last season, Tilquan Rucker, out of South Bronx Prep, he got a full scholarship to go Division II. So he is down at an HBCU in Columbia, South Carolina, Benedict College, continuing his career there. A couple recent baseball grads, Aaron Bonilla is pitching at Baker University, and Carlos Ayala is at Sterling College, both in Kansas. Then a recent men's soccer grad on the academic side got a full ride to go Ivy League at Brown University, where he's studying economics, Bryce Segali. So he's, maximizing his academic potential there. So wherever it is you want to go, you can get there through BCC Athletics.
And talk to me a little bit about how athletes are really dealing. I mean, you've got students who are making transfers and they're going other places. Do you feel as though that the morale is low in terms of, hey, I missed my shot to be able to possibly be seen by somebody else?
Well, to that, no one's missed a lot yet. We missed the interaction and the camaraderie, but the fall seasons that would typically be going on now are pushed to the spring. So it'll be all hands on deck for we administrators and coaches in the spring, but we're working to ensure that they don't miss that shot. So fingers crossed, every student athlete will have his and her opportunity to showcase themselves, albeit in the spring in a kind of non-traditional sense. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. And I know you wear another hat as well. Talk to me a little bit about your position. You also are, as far as CUNY is concerned, the community college athletic directors, you are the president. And so talk to us about that and what possibly we could be expecting going forward, moving forward into 2021.
Yes, that's not always such an interesting role as it is now in these uncertain times. So it's a lot of planning and implementing in forecasting in best health and safety measures and precautions. So we have our hands full, we CUNY athletic directors, as does every AD nationally, in kind of forecasting, in putting in place the best practices so that when we do return over the winter and really get going January and into the spring, all the measures are in place to ensure safe return for our student athletes, coaches. Unfortunately, no spectators for the spring, but we want to be able to hit the ground running, and it's everything we're doing from the spring and the summer now through the fall that is hopefully going to make.
Yeah. And I know for athletes, one of the biggest challenges, of course, sometimes is the whole academic component, and being able to offer that academic athletic support is critical in the life sometimes of student athletes. Has it been quite challenging for you to be able to offer the athletic academic support, given the fact that number one, students aren't on campus, and it's hard to sometimes have a pulse when you don't have that physical presence there?
It is, that rapport isn't there. Our coaches did a great job of recruiting student athletes over the summer, but they still don't have that face-to-face rapport and relationship that every coach would typically have. And likewise for student athletes in our support services. So like I mentioned, with the town halls and with the Zoom meetings, that's where we get to kind of reiterate the support systems throughout campus. Within our department, we have our own student athlete academic coordinator. So it's really connecting virtually like we are today by Zoom. We have a laptop and Chromebook loan policy where students can get those. They can get Wi-Fi adapters from campus by mail. So it's these resources that would typically be face-to-face and in-person, and the in-person academic support appointments, all that's gone virtual. So again, thank heavens for Zoom and our ability to interact virtually.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, I know you've got your hands full, but thank you for the great job that you're doing over there at Bronx Community College, and of course, keeping our community colleges on the battlefield, literally, for athletes, as well as for the administration. Thanks a lot, Ryan. Ryan McCarthy from Bronx Community College. Thank you.
You're welcome, Daren. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Well, listen, if you want more information, of course, you can go to their website and find out more about BCC athletics, and then also stay connected to us. And of course, you'll find out all that's happening with regards to BCC as well. Stay with us. We've got more show coming up. We'll be right back right after this.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
And thank you for staying with us. Early Adopter is an immersive learning company with a focus on augmented reality in education. They have a passion for engaging students in project-based learning. Well, how's the organization been adapting technology to create a more engaging experience for students in remote learning? Well, joining us now to share a little bit more about that is the General Manager of Early Adopter, Jay Van Buren. And Jay, good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
Thank you so much for being with us. I want to talk to you a little bit about augmented reality because we hear the word augmented reality, but some people may not be so familiar with what augmented reality is. So please share.
Sure. So augmented reality is when you're using a phone or a tablet. So you're looking through a phone or you're looking through a tablet, you're seeing the real world, but then you're seeing additional stuff on top of it. And it's different from virtual reality, which is the one where you have the headset on your head and you're completely in a different world. You're seeing nothing that's real at all. Augmented reality, you're still in the same room, you're still seeing everything around you, but you're then also seeing this other information. And what we've been doing to kind of change our playbook a little bit because of COVID is we've been finding ways for kids who are in different places to use augmented reality to see the same thing. So I'm in my room looking through my tablet or phone, you're in your room looking through your tablet or phone, and we're both seeing the same thing appear in our rooms respectively. And we can talk to each other. That's where it becomes really powerful because with that social component, we're able to talk to each other while we're looking at these things together, and it makes it a conversation, and it's kind of magical. When we first did this, we were just blown away by how it felt for us, and we knew it would be exciting for kids and for parents and teachers, obviously, too. You really do feel like you're in the same room, and you're talking about, this material together, and even though you may be separated because of COVID.
Yeah. So I know for every parent, it's a real struggle just to make sure that their kids stay connected virtually, right? And even for us as adults, sometimes it's quite problematic being connected, given the fact of all that's going on. You got multiple people in the same house sometimes. But talk to us about the feedback that you're getting in terms of this, because this is really a game changer of sorts.
Yeah, I think it is. So we're working with, right now, we've been working with Avenues, the World School, and they got really excited about this technology and started using it. And they're actually using it in 2 days. There's going to be another event that they're doing using this technology. So we're all getting ready for that. The feedback that we've been getting is really positive. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. It absolutely is. I think that I know certainly with younger kids, it's hard for them to sit in one place for a long time and stare at a screen. And for everybody, it is really. And when you use this platform, you're up, you're standing up, you're looking around. You can look at 3D objects, 3D virtual models. You can watch videos. You can see other kinds of material, and it's all in space around you. And because you're up and you're moving and you're walking around, I think it helps the learning process. It helps you kind of wake you up a little bit, and it allows you to see things that really go completely beyond what you can see on a 2D screen. I mean, this is really the promise and the exciting thing about augmented reality is that it is making information three-dimensional. And we as embodied beings, we are built to interact with the 3D world. That's what our mental software was designed for. Right. I think we forget that. We spend so much time looking at books, computer screens, all of these 2D things, right? And we have historically for really the way that we want to interact with things in the world is in 3 dimensions. That's like a better, more natural way to interact with things. Well, augmented reality means that all the power of a computer and the power for the flexibility of all of that is now possible in 3 dimensions. So you can see things in 3 dimensions, you can walk around them, you can look at them, you can move them. All of that kind of stuff is possible in a 3-dimensional context. And that really changes education.
So you really feel like augmented reality is going to be the future for technology and education?
I do. I really do. I mean, that's why I'm working in this industry, because I was in websites, 20 years ago. And, back then it was very exciting. The web was new and people were just figuring out what to do with it. And I loved that. I thought that was really fun. And so when I saw the new wave of augmented reality coming, I just wanted to jump right on that because I think it's going to change the way we do everything. I think it's going to change the way we interact with computers. Keyboards are going to go away. Screens are going to go away. We're going to have in our glasses, the ability to put any information around us that we want. We'll just be able to wiggle our fingers in the air to type. This is going to take a few years, right? It's not going to happen tomorrow, but that is where we're headed. I would confidently predict that in 10 years, when you're talking about doing any kind of a task that has to do with a computer, you're not even going to say, I'm going to do blah, blah, and I'm going to use augmented reality. Because why would you use anything else? Like, of course you're going to use augmented reality. Just like nobody says today, oh, I'm going to use a computer spreadsheet, right? Like, what other kind of spreadsheet would you ever use, right? So same thing's going to happen with AR. It's going to just be how we interact with computers.
Yeah, yeah. And so for students, how easy is this? I mean, obviously we talked about, you know, what it brings to the educational forefront, but how easy is it becoming from the lens of a student? Because we do know students have a lot of challenges and learning virtually is a challenge. So talk to us about the ease that this gives students in terms of being able to grasp the concept and all the stuff that's coming before them.
I do think it's pretty easy, really. Technologically, it is as easy as just downloading an app. So they download an app. The app kind of steps them through how to use it, what to do. There's a little video that you see in the beginning that shows you what you're going to do. Once they place it on the floor, they pick a spot on the floor that becomes the center of the sort of, you know, augmented reality room that appears in their room with other material in it. And then actually kids take to it right away. They get it immediately.
It's us that has the problem.
It's the grown-ups that have to get their mind around it a little bit. But one of the things I think is a real advantage for this, where the kids, I mean, not just the fact that, like, obviously you can see different kinds of things, you can interact with each other. It's also just great getting them some experience and some exposure to this new technology. Because one of the things I like to say to people, the challenges in this industry are only half technical. They're half technical and they're half conceptual. Because you have to start thinking about information in a new way. And you have to start thinking about what you can do with it in an augmented reality context. And we all are going to need to think like that. We're going to be, you know, that's the world we're going to be living in. And so if you can give your kids a chance to get in on this now, kind of learn a little bit more about how it works, and how to think about it, they're going to be a step ahead because they're already starting to think in that way. And especially, you know, younger people have more flexible minds. They'll probably get it quicker than us old folks will. But that, I think that's a big part of it. And then also, by the way we have the system set up, the kids actually just use a regular web-based interface to upload the content. So if they're creating a presentation for AR, they can upload it through a regular website. They can upload the pictures, upload the 3D models if they have them, upload the videos, and then they appear in this 3D space when they look through the app. So it's pretty easy.
Pretty easy, but we'll see what the adults say about that one. Listen, real quickly before we go, if somebody wants to get in touch and get ahead of this and become a part early on, what do they do?
Just go to earlyadopter.com. And you can actually, there's a form on the website. You can just reach out through that. Or you can also find us. We're on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. So contact us any way that you want to. You can also just email me, jay@early-adopter.com. And that would be a great way to reach out to.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Jay. We're excited to even bring this to people, let people know this is available. And as the future comes about, we'll remember this conversation.
Right on.
All right.
Thank you.
Jay Van Buren, our guest here, and want to thank him for joining us. Now, if you want more information, all you've got to do is go to their website, earlyadopter.com. Well, we've come to the end of our show today. We want to thank all of our guests for joining us, but most of all, you, the viewer, for tuning in. And if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast on BronxNet's Channel 67. If you have Verizon Files, that'd be Channel 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. For all of us here on the set of Open, I'm Daren Jaime saying take care and God bless. Make sure you tune in on Friday. My girl, Rena Valentine, will bring you a brand new episode of Open, bringing you arts and entertainment. Until then, stay safe and keep this channel open. God bless.